What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are outside the Kingsland in Brooklyn today, and today we are here with JT of Famous Last Words. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you were here about a month and a half ago. A little bit of deja vu, right?
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's good to be back, though. I love Brooklyn, so.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with Brooklyn, the hardcore capital of the world.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But it's so awesome to have you here. Your latest EP is the Arizona EP. Is this like kind of like a follow-up to the Incubus record, or do you think that this is more or less like a new entity in your catalog?
This is a completely new entity in our catalog. It's the first CD that we put out since Pick Your Poison, which is our first EP, that isn't a concept record. This one just mostly focuses on, just stuff I personally felt like I really needed to get out of me, and the best way for me to vent my own fucking issues is always through music, so that's how we did it.
Of course. What I'm curious is, you mentioned it's the first record to not have a concept behind it. Do you sometimes think of a concept and that determines the outcome of the music, or do you need to hear music before you come up with like a storyline or even lyrics?
It's usually the concept first. So what we'll do is I'll figure out what the story is going to be, right? And then I'll break it down into like chapters essentially, and those are the songs. And I'll figure out, what kind of vibe does this song need? Like, what is this, a sad song? Like, what's happening in the story right here? That like, if I could just listen to an instrumental, that would basically tell me the story just with the music alone. And so we'll write the songs that way when we're doing the concept stuff, and then I'll do lyrics last, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you tend to, like, when you write a concept album, do you like to leave the lyrics sort of like open to interpretation? Like, can a fan like make it their own sort of entity, or do you try to maybe inform the listener and engage them in the story that you have in mind?
That's a great question. With the songs, what I usually try to do is I want a lot of the song to be vague enough for people to enjoy without knowing the story, but I also want to leave the details in there as well to make it, so they can follow the story if they want to. So what I'll do is I'll make the verses a lot more story specific, and then the choruses will be a more, much more vague and a little bit broader for them to sort of, because most people connect to the choruses most, it's the meat of the song. So I leave that part open to interpretation in case they want to do it that way. So it's really a either or situation.
Interesting. Now, kind of going back to the Arizona EP, you mentioned that like this is such something you needed to get out of you. Is there a specific reason why that like you decided to make it like a EP versus like a full-length album?
Honestly, that's just kind of how it happened. We originally went out to Matt Good to just do a couple of songs, and we did two of them, and they turned out sweet. So we went back and just did a few more, and then we it just kind of fell into place, really.
It was like a quality over quantity sort of thing, right?
Not even that. It just happened. It was the first time we didn't do like fucking months and months of planning before the recording process.
So it kind of happened a little bit more like
It
spontaneously.
was a lot more, more organic. Just kind of fell into place.
Interesting. Going back now to like the stories and concepts, do these come from like an external source? Is this like an internal source of inspiration, or are you kind of looking outward for a storyline or concept?
A little bit of both. I think I draw from personal experiences, but then I also do tons and tons and tons of research to try to really capture the characters and their situations correctly. And it's really a cool opportunity for me to learn a lot about different people's experiences and their problems and how they deal with it, and it helps me just understand the world more, really. So it's each album's a huge learning process.
And does it represent, are these stories like something you've always had in mind and something you always felt about, or did this come from like kind of like what you were saying, like inexperience, like you never had this story before? They've always said that work comes out of work sometimes, so.
Again, a little bit of both. It's like sometimes the stories will just like hit me out of nowhere. Like the Incubus, like it just randomly hit me like a train at 3 a.m. Just boom, the whole thing from start to finish, and I was like, shit, I gotta write this down. And nothing really inspired it. It just happened. And when that happens, I just take the wheel, just roll with it, because it's hard to get into that creative zone where things are just like flowing really well. So when it happens, I just fucking let it happen.
I feel like you should like keep a notebook on you at all times,
Oh,
just
yeah.
because you never know what could come.
My
to
phone's
mind.
notes are just full. Just full.
Damn, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to bringing your music to the live presence, do you try to execute the material exactly how people are hearing it on the record, or do you try to maybe make the live experience a little bit of a different experience than people just simply listening to you guys?
It's pretty close to the record. We want to show people that we can do what we do on the records. You know, like we can translate this live very well, and it'll sound just like what you're expecting to hear. Although I would like to get a little more creative and have a little more fun live with it. Yeah.
Especially, it also depends on like the room that you're in and the crowd.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And you've also played with like many different types of bands. Like you played with like Escape the Fate and Slaves, but you've also played with like a deathcore band like Era, kind of like that.
Yep.
So sometimes, depending on the
Crowds are
audience.
different. Exactly. Exactly. You got to feel the tour out.
Yeah. Have you felt like a different reaction depending on like the tours or bills you've been on?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always a different crowd. You know, there's gonna be those regulars that come out like religiously, but it's good if it's a different crowd always, because that means you're making new fans. You know.
Yeah, I could see you touring on like a mainstream rock band, like with a band like Fozzy or a band like Killswitch Engage at the same time.
That'd be awesome.
Now, I kind of in a way just sort of asked this, but with the making of every album, you know, you talked about the stories and the sounds, but like there is a sound that I would say really defines you guys. Is there kind of like an underlying armature that I would say defines the whole catalog of Famous Last Words?
I think my voice just essentially like could go over anything that it goes over is just gonna make it automatically sound like a Famous Last Word song, because we've experimented with so many different styles already throughout our entire catalog. Like we have softer songs, we have full-on fucking metal songs, we have acoustic songs, just and it all just comes back to sounding like Famous Last Words. Like I feel like even if we wrote like a super butt rock song, it would just, as soon as my voice went on it, it'd be like, oh, that's Famous Last Words.
Yep.
So.
Exactly. You definitely have that defining voice but you got to completely go way off the rail for like the next album. Like do something that people are not expecting musically at all.
I will try.
Yeah. Do a rap record.
Yeah, but bam.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is, before we started rolling, we talked a little bit about the Michigan metal scene. You know, Michigan, the home of Black Dahlia Murder, We Came as Romans, Walls of Jericho, so many great bands.
Yeah.
Did you kind of cut your teeth in a scene in Michigan, or did you want to kind of go outside your hometown a little bit more to get your name out there?
I mean, we of course started doing local stuff, and back in the day when like local scenes were just hopping, you know, we would throw shows at VFW halls and shit like that, and get like 400 kids to go. Now the local scenes are completely different than they were back then. But after doing that for a while back in the day, we really just wanted to try to expand. You know, we played all those same places over and over again. And it's you just kind of have to slowly start moving out and try to get more fans that way.
Of course. You mentioned that it's very different now, but is there still a thriving scene in Michigan?
In Michigan, yeah. Where I live, we're about 4 hours from like any major city. Like the closest city to us would be Traverse City. That's still an hour and a half away. So we're way up north. So it's kind of it's definitely a drive just to play a show no matter where we go.
Exactly. Well, there's a famous saying, a musician would have like $5,000 worth of gear, rent a cheap $500 van, drive 50 miles just to play a $5 gig or something like that.
Yep. Nailed it.
So before we go, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. It's going to be an
thanks for
awesome
having me, man.
Of course. Is there just anything else you would like to promote for Famous Last Words? Could we be expecting a new full-length record anytime soon, or an EP or anything else?
There are many roads, many directions that could go from here, and we're just still trying to figure that out. But it's gonna go somewhere, and we're gonna figure something out, and I'm excited to see what that is myself.
Oh, a little mystery.
Little mystery.
Why do I have a feeling that just like this Monday or something like that, you're just gonna post like your biggest tour yet or something like that?
Who knows, man? Maybe I will.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, JT.
Thanks for having me, man.
Everybody, we are here with JT of Famous Last Words. Pick up the Arizona EP if you haven't already, and be on the lookout for whatever road they're heading down.
Whatever road.
We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.